So we'll get to the review in a minute, but I do have to bring up some shit because I think this election has really brought out the worst in people, and unfortunately, people are talking less. Now, the definition of ignorance is a lack of knowledge and information. So if you spend your whole life only engaging with people who, I guess, completely agree with your perspective, then riddle me this. Would you say you are a person who is more knowledgeable or less? And if you have less knowledge and a general lack of information, isn't that literally the definition of ignorance? The only reason that people who disagree with other people don't engage with them is because they can't. And what does that say about you? That's pretty sad. Anyways, I just wanted to get this off my chest. So what's up everybody, and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. So I know what a lot of people are gonna say, but Alan, why are you talking about social commentary in a video game review? This is a video game review channel. Well, actually no it isn't. When I created AGR's Pop Culture Reviews, I said we were gonna talk about more, and this is the more. And I think I've said this before. And one of the reasons that we have to bring it up is because this title is ripe with political strife, and a lot of problems that we had in the 1960s are resurfacing today. Now, I don't know what that says about American culture and society, but it's definitely very pervasive. So let's take a closer look at Mafia 3. As I alluded to before, Mafia 3 takes place in the 1960s, arguably one of the most tumultuous times in American history, and more interestingly, it takes place in a fictional New Orleans called New Bordeaux. Now, what I already like about this title is that it's a staunch departure from Mafia and Mafia 2. One of the reasons that I like it is that the setting is absolutely fantastic, and personally I've always wanted to see some story or some narrative in New Orleans. For some reason there is something mystical about this part of our nation, and it's definitely steeped in a lot of mysticism given the Creole French background, and it's absolutely fascinating and works very well on the overall narrative of this title. But the changes don't only stop there. And what I love about this title is the actual protagonist, Clay Lincoln. Now, what makes him so great is that he is biracial. He's a mix between Dominican and African American. And man, is this character a freaking badass. He's recently returned from the Vietnam War as an ex-Special Forces member, and I'm telling you, he is no freaking joke. What makes his character so compelling is that he strays away from the common tropes. He's absolutely not a stereotype in any way. He's a compassionate person with a lot of loyalty. It just so happens that he's thrown back into the world with this very crazy scenario, and things slowly start to unravel. Now, one of the commentaries in this actual title is that they talk about how when soldiers come home, how they deal with post-traumatic stress. And one character actually puts it brilliantly in the title, where he says, you know, yeah, you're back home, but you're not really back. And I thought that was something very important when you bring up the issue of Vietnam veterans and how they were treated once they came back to the United States. Another thing that impressed me about this game is that a lot of the supporting cast, and they're very integral to the story, are told from the perspective of minorities. Definitely the Haitian community, French Creole, and the African American perspective. And that is one of the best things about this game. Mafia 3 is also very smooth in how it delivers its social commentary, and it definitely brings up the issue of race, but it doesn't throw it in your face. It just instead makes it a part of the overall game and some of the mechanics, and you can definitely see this in a lot of the cutscenes. Again, it doesn't smack you in the face, it's not trying to be self-righteous, but it does let you know, hey, this is the 1960s, these things happened, and it was completely normal for that time, even though we, from our perspective in 2016, would be completely horrified with some of the behavior. It does bring it up. Mafia 3 is a perfect example of substance over beauty. Now, this is definitely not the best looking game I've ever played visually, and at times it could be downright ugly. And I really feel sorry for PC owners who have to play this game locked in at the 30 frames per second, because this game should be enjoyed at the higher frame rate and the highest resolution possible. Now, those gripes aside, and I did notice that there was a lot of stuttering and the frame rate would dip below 20 frames per second on the PS4, what keeps you coming back to this title is the absolutely amazing and compelling narrative. Gunplay in Mafia 3 is also very satisfying. While not the best I've ever had, it gets the job done. There's a very easy to use cover mechanic system for this third-person shooter. The weapons feel visceral and weighty, and there's also a lot of variety between your M1, your shotgun, your pistol, your submachine gun, and various other Molotov cocktails that you can use against your enemies. Now, the only complaint that I have with the overall mechanics is the aim assist. Now, you can choose the level of sensitivity in your aim assist, but overall, it's very inconsistent. What my recommendation is that if you're gonna play this game, definitely turn off the aim assist. It's only gonna frustrate you guys. It would be a crime if I didn't give special attention to the characterizations, the motion captures, and definitely the voice acting in this game. It is absolutely phenomenal and really a credit to the direction that they wanted to go with this game. It's such a shame that the rest of the game isn't as refined as these cutscenes, because it would be an absolutely perfect title. I have to give credit where credit is due, and this was one of the best things about this title. It was compelling, it was emotional, and it kept you invested and really wanting to know more about these characters. It was just such a great job. The city of New Bordeaux is definitely a character in and of itself, and in terms of atmosphere, it is off the charts. What I love about this title, and one of the complaints that I have with other so-called open world games, is that they feel lifeless. It's not the case here. You actually feel like this city is alive and vibrant. In this sequence here, you're actually walking down their equivalent of the French Quarter, and people are reacting to your presence, especially the cops. Remember, this is the 1960s, okay? And an African American walking with somebody slung over his shoulder, yeah, that's gonna attract the attention of the police. And I love its authenticity and the fact that it's so real in terms of what would actually happen in a scenario like this is only a credit to the game, and I really loved it. Now, there are other elements of this game that make it very interesting and immerse you in this world, and kind of sees it from the perspective that there's a lot more going on in New Bordeaux. Definitely the intervention of the CIA. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's just a lot more interesting once you find out certain things about what's going on in the game. And you're gonna love it. Stylistically, one of the other cool components of this game is that it tells the perspective in several flashbacks, almost like a documentary. A lot of the times you see many of the characters in the game as old men reliving or recounting the events that happened in New Bordeaux, and that's just freaking awesome. The other really cool thing about this game is the amazing soundtrack. When you're driving in your vehicle to get from point A to point B, you can switch the radio stations and hear tunes from various artists, like Clearance Clearwater Revival, Johnny Cash, the Rolling Stones, the Doors, some of the best music that came from the 1960s. I can only imagine the licensing agreements that had to be made for this game, but it's absolutely money well spent. As I mentioned before, Mafia 3 is steeped in political satire and social injustice, and again, it's not so overt. You may be walking down the street and somebody might have a radio on, or you might be walking by a TV store and they'll have news coverage of the assassinations of Robert Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr. And I think it just makes it that much more compelling and really immerses you in the 1960s and everything that was going on politically and socially. It certainly says something about the US government and how we make the decisions to go to wars, and especially how we enact US foreign policy. Now, the tragedy of the Vietnam War is not just that 50,000 Americans died during the 10-year conflict, it's that 50,000 Americans had to die, including millions of Cambodians and Vietnamese, before Americans finally started to think, maybe we should question our government, maybe we're not always on the right side of a conflict. And that's something that is definitely worth exploring, and I'm glad that Mafia 3 puts that to the forefront. Overall, guys, Mafia 3 is an excellent title. Sure, it has a couple bumps, and I imagine if this game was given a little more time to incubate, to really refine it, it would be a perfect game. Unfortunately, that's not what happened, but you can't deny the compelling narrative, the excellent acting, and the overall magnificent story. Now, those performance issues aside, there's absolutely no reason that you should miss this title. I highly recommend it, and you might learn a little bit of something, especially what's going on in our current society. Because I will say this, guys, as a historian, sometimes echoes from the past are so compelling and give us such moments of clarity that it speaks volumes about where we want our future to be. And the great equalizer is that it's completely up to us. Alright guys, so that's my official review on Mafia 3. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.
Paranoia strikes deep into your life, it will creep. It starts when you're always afraid. Step out of line, the man come and take you away. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop now. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop. What's that sound? There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look